Hello everyone, and welcome to a quick tutorial on how you can get slime in early game Minecraft when you're using the Create 0.3.1 mod. And when you start playing with the mod, you'll notice really early on that you need slime in order for your contraptions to work. You'll see that the chest is stuck there onto that chassis using slime. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be rotating along with the windmill, in which case it wouldn't be being used in order to store the crops that the harvesters were taking up. When they go around, that storage is then offloaded into a storage system, and without that it wouldn't work as well. So, now we know that we're going to have to get hold of some slime. Let's see how we're going to be making it. Luckily, the Create mod gives us a nice and easy recipe that we can use for it. So we're going to be using a combination of dough and lime green dye. Of those two, dough is definitely the easiest one to make. We're going to be using just wheat to get that one. Lime green dye is a tad more awkward to get hold of. If you've got a coral reef nearby and you can get sea pickles, fantastic, you can just smelt them straight into lime green dye. If not, you'll need to make the dye using a combination of different plants and possibly some bones. So what you're going to need to do is get hold of white dye. Easiest way to do that is going to be to use bones. You can pop them into the crafting recipe, you'll get bone meal, and bone meal can be turned straight into white dye. Green dye, on the other hand, will probably depend on where it is you're living in your world. If you've got a tiger nearby, you can shear off ferns, use those in the mill and they will crush down to green dye. If you've got a desert nearby, cactus will also crush down into green dye. If you're anywhere else and you don't have the pickles, then you're probably going to resort to these. So these are just normal common poppies that turn up in pretty much every biome in the game. And poppies can be broken down into red and green dye in your mill, but there is a slight issue with that. If I go and grab a stack of them, and then we throw them into our mill, whee, they will go in and you'll notice they're being crushed down. You can see the particles around the side of the mill. That's the sign that it's working. And the issue that we've got is you've only got a 5% chance of actually getting green dye out of a crushed poppy. So if we click to take some out, you can see we've only got red dye that time, and it's a case of just standing here and repeatedly clicking until you get some green dye. Nope. 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 Ah, there we go. So we've now got a green dye. As I say, it's a 5% chance of getting some. Once you've got that, you can then combine it with the white dye that we'll just make up quickly. One white dye, one green dye, and that is going to give you 2 lime dye. And then we just need to make the dough. So luckily making dough is really easy as well. What we're going to do is grab some of our wheat out. We'll get the rest of the flours out of this machine. And then we'll throw the wheat in. You don't need very much wheat at all. Each one is going to go down into 1 wheat flour. So we'll just give them a second to mush down. And there we go. So we've now got a wheat flour, and then we can combine that with water in order to make the dough. So we just grab a water bucket out. 1 water bucket plus 1 wheat flour gives 1 dough. Get rid of the bucket. 1 dough plus 1 lime dye gives 1 slime ball. And I think you'll agree that that is an awful lot easier than having to go and run around in a swamp somewhere trying to find your very first slime ball, especially if you've only just started a new world. And once you've got yourself a slime ball, you can then start thinking about making some of this. So this is not the toothpaste that it looks like, it is in fact Superglue. And what you can use it for is sticking things to your contraptions where there isn't a convenient place for slime, but we'll go over that in just a second. For now though, let's just make up some Superglue. So to create some, we're going to need 2 slime balls, also an iron sheet and an iron nugget. So iron sheets are relatively easy to make. You're just going to need a mechanical press. It doesn't need to be linked up to any kind of power source. I've just got mine on a hand crank just there. Bit easier, quicker to do in the early game. We're just going to need to grab some iron. And we're going to throw that underneath our press. Once underneath, you can just crank on the shaft. Press goes down. It has now squashed that ingot into a sheet, as you can see. As for the others, getting the nuggets, you can just craft them in the usual way. So we're going to need another slime ball. Let me just grab one. You. There we go. 2 slime balls, 1 nugget, and 1 sheet, and that is going to craft us our super glue. Easy peasy. So you might be wondering, what is the point of having superglue at all when you can be using slime? Now, in order to demonstrate the difference between the two, we're going to be using this little windmill that I've made here. So you can see it's been constructed using a radial chassis which has this very familiar texture on it. This is the same texture that they use on pistons, and it's an indication that it can be made sticky with a slime ball. If you actually double click on there, you'll find that all 4 sides will become sticky, but it depends on whether that's what you need. We only really need one. So for now, we'll just place one just there. And that stickiness will mean that you can attach on, say, a plank to it, for example, and now when clicked, the whole thing will rotate together, which is great, although still not really very useful to us. What, for example, if we wanted it to be this sort of shape, to cut down trees or to harvest crops or anything like that? Well, then that slime ball isn't going to be able to hold on to all of these bits and pieces as well. It only extends out from the surface that it's placed on. So we need something a little bit different, and that is where our superglue comes in. If we place that onto this surface, then we place the plank on top. The plank is stuck to the radial chassis via the slime, and it's now also sticking to this what would normally be an unsticky block using the superglue in the middle. And when I set them off, they will all move together. So now we're getting somewhere. This is becoming something much more useful to us. From there, we can then extend that out. A bit more superglue, plank, superglue, and you will need to use superglue in between each of your blocks. Plank, and you'll see all of those particles that come out from around the side to show that it's working, and then we can set this one off again. And as you can see, it's pushing everything around. From here now, we can place our harvesters, for example. We can place them along here in a row, set them off, and now this contraption will harvest crops for you that are in the way. As you can see, the harvesters are rotating by themselves as they're being pushed, so they are being used. Stop that one off again. And if we just remove them, and try the same thing with saws, you'll notice that it doesn't work. Saws don't automatically stick to anything, so at the moment those blocks are just moving straight through them, as you can see. So we need to stick them onto the blocks somehow, and funnily enough, you wouldn't be able to do that with slime because you're sticking onto oak planks and that's not got this specific surface, but you can use the super glue. There we go, so we put glue on our planks and then we go for saw, saw and saw. And now when we set it off, everything is moving together, and that is the big difference between slime and superglue when it comes to making your contraptions. They're both very useful, but superglue, while more expensive, can certainly do a lot more jobs. And that is the big difference between slime and superglue. Slime, you can only stick it to the places you would expect to be able to slime. Pistons, chassis, anything like that. Superglue, you can use to stick anything to anything, even if it's rotating. So this was just a really quick little tutorial just to tell you how to make slime in the early game before you're getting on to wanting to automate it or anything like that, when you just need that first slime ball to get your contraptions working, even if it's just something like a little harvester. Anywho, I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial and you go make some super glue of your own. Really does look like toothpaste. But I'll see you again soon, guys. Bye! And just to point out for anybody who spotted this in the background, yes, next time we'll be looking at automating slime production. This is just a little factory that'll fit up against a wall for you. But as I say, bye guys, I'll see you soon. Bye! Bye 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 bye!